The clock read 11:47 p.m. when I heard Seren's voice drifting through our bedroom wall. She was in the kitchen, speaking in that soft, conspiratorial tone she used to reserve for me, back when we were more than roommates sharing a mortgage. I should have been asleep. Any reasonable 40-year-old librarian with an early morning shift would have been. But insomnia had become my unwelcome companion these past months, ever since things between Seren and me had started feeling like a business arrangement rather than a marriage. No, that's not what I meant, she was saying, followed by a giggle I hadn't heard in years. I see you as just a friend, Wes. Nothing more. He's just there, you know? My name. She was talking about me. I slipped out of bed, bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. 17 years of marriage had taught me exactly which boards creaked and which ones didn't. The hallway was dark, but I knew every inch of this house. I'd fixed every squeaky hinge, replaced every burnt-out bulb, painted every room at least twice. I know, Seren continued, her voice carrying that breathless quality I remembered from our early dating days. But it's complicated. We have the kids, the house, all the practical stuff. But emotionally, romantically, there's nothing there anymore. I pressed my back against the kitchen doorframe, staying in the shadows. Through the crack, I could see her sitting at our breakfast table, phone pressed to her ear, wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her last Christmas, the ones she claimed were too fancy for everyday wear. "Ethan, you make me feel alive again," she whispered, "like I'm actually a woman, not just a mom and a mortgage payment." Ethan. I knew that name. Ethan Baird, the smooth-talking business consultant who joined her HR firm 6 months ago, the one she'd mentioned in passing, always with a little too much enthusiasm about his innovative networking strategies and dynamic presentation style. "I wish I could just pack up and leave tomorrow," Seren said, twirling a strand of her auburn hair around her finger. "Start fresh somewhere." But Wes would make it complicated. He's got this way of making everything about logic and responsibility. It's exhausting. My sarcastic inner voice, usually my most reliable companion, had gone completely silent. This wasn't happening. Except it was. My wife of 17 years was planning her escape with another man, discussing me like I was a piece of furniture she couldn't figure out how to dispose of. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," she continued. "He's too wrapped up in his books and his little electronic projects in the basement. Besides, I've been careful, really careful." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, but I'd heard enough. I crept back to our bedroom, slipped under the covers, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. When Seren finally came to bed around 1 a.m., she settled on her side without a word, as if she'd just been getting a glass of water. The next morning, I made coffee and toast like always. Seren came downstairs at 7:15, dressed in her sharp navy business suit, ready for another day of managing corporate human resources and apparently conducting her affair. "Morning," she said, grabbing her travel mug from the counter. "Good morning," I replied, not looking up from my newspaper. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby." She paused at the kitchen island, studying my face. "You seem quiet this morning." "Just tired. Long night." "Maybe you should see someone about that insomnia. It's been going on for months." I nodded, turning a page I wasn't actually reading. "Maybe I should." Seren kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture like checking an item off a to-do list, and headed for the garage. I listened to her car pull out of the driveway, then sat in the sudden silence of our kitchen, processing what I'd learned. My wife saw me as just a friend, nothing more. Well, if that's what she wanted, that's exactly what she was going to get. I opened my laptop and began making adjustments. First, I removed Seren from my Google Calendar access. All our shared events, reminders, and appointments disappeared from her view. Then I canceled our anniversary dinner reservation at Chez Laurent, the upscale French restaurant where we'd celebrated every year for the past decade. The confirmation email would go to both of us, per the restaurant's policy. No replacement plan, no explanation, no discussion. Next, I redirected our shared discretionary spending. The automatic transfers to our date night fund, vacation savings, and joint entertainment budget all got rerouted to my personal account. Friends don't maintain joint finances for romantic purposes. By the time I left for work at the university library, I had systematically downgraded my wife from spouse to acquaintance. It felt surprisingly liberating. The Whitmore University Library was my sanctuary, a Gothic revival building with soaring ceilings, endless stacks, and the kind of peaceful quiet that only comes from being surrounded by knowledge. I'd worked there for 15 years, starting as a junior librarian fresh out of graduate school and working my way up to head of digital archives. "You look like someone stole your favorite bookmark," said Sasha Martinez, my closest colleague and the library's reference specialist. She was sharp-tongued, fiercely loyal, and had an uncanny ability to read people's moods from across the building. "Just a long night," I said, settling into my office chair and powering up my computer. "Uh-huh." Sasha perched on the edge of my desk, her dark eyes studying my face with the intensity of a detective examining evidence. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "When was the last time you and Seren did something together? Like, actually together, not just existing in the same house?" The question hit closer to home than I cared to admit. "We're both busy. She's got her career, I've got mine. The kids have their activities." "That's not what I asked." I looked at Sasha, weighing my options. She'd been my friend long before she became my colleague, and she had a way of extracting information that would have made the CIA jealous. But I wasn't ready to share what I'd learned. Not yet. "Things are complicated right now," I said finally. "They always are. The question is whether you're going to do something about it or just let them stay complicated." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message. From Seren. "Dinner tonight? Maybe we could try that new Italian place?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Sorry, already have plans with colleagues. Rain check?" It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have plans. They just involved going home, working on my electronics projects in the basement, and treating my wife exactly like what she'd said she wanted me to be. Just a friend. The response came back almost immediately. "Since when do you make plans without checking with me first?" "Since I found out you're planning to leave me for your consultant boyfriend," I thought. Instead, I typed, "Friends don't need to coordinate their social calendars." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't respond. Let her figure it out. The rest of my workday passed in a strange sort of clarity. For months, I'd been trying to understand why our marriage felt so hollow, why every conversation seemed forced, why Seren looked at me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. Now I knew. She'd already moved on emotionally. She was just waiting for the right moment to make it official. Well, I wasn't going to make it easy for her. When I got home that evening, Seren's car was already in the garage. I found her in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, heating up leftovers in the microwave. "Hey," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "How was your day?" "Fine. Yours?" "Good. Busy." She paused, clearly waiting for me to elaborate on my mysterious evening plans. When I didn't, she pressed on. "So what's this about dinner with colleagues? Since when do you socialize after work?" I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, taking my time with the answer. Since I realized I should probably maintain some friendships outside this house. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing dramatic. Just think it's healthy to have independent social lives, don't you?" Serene's eyes narrowed slightly. She was smart, too smart not to sense that something had shifted. "Wes, if something's bothering you, just say it. This passive-aggressive thing isn't like you." "I'm not being passive-aggressive. I'm being practical. I took a sip of my beer and met her gaze directly. You're right that we should both have our own interests, our own friends, our own lives. I'm just following your lead. My lead? What are you talking about? Nothing specific, just general relationship philosophy. Our 17-year-old son Owen chose that moment to wander into the kitchen, earbuds dangling around his neck, looking for snacks. He had my dark hair and his mother's sharp green eyes, plus the kind of observational skills that came from growing up in a house where important conversations happened in subtext. "What's for dinner?" he asked, glancing between us. "Leftovers," Serene said, her voice tight. "Your father has other plans." Owen looked at me with raised eyebrows. In all his 17 years, I'd probably gone out without the family maybe a dozen times, and never on a weeknight. "Just grabbing drinks with some people from work," I said casually. "Nothing exciting." "Cool." Owen grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and headed back toward the stairs. "Tell Sasha I said hi." After he left, Seren turned back to me. "You're going out with Sasha?" "Among others." "Since when do you and Sasha hang out after work?" "Since tonight, apparently." I finished my beer and rinsed the bottle in the sink. "I should get going, don't wait up." I left Seren standing in the kitchen, confusion and something that might have been concern flickering across her face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered her voice from the night before. "I see you as just a friend, Wes, nothing more." Fine, just a friend it was. The Black Finch wasn't the kind of place I usually frequented. It was a dive bar on the outskirts of town, all dark wood and neon beer signs, where the locals came to complain about their jobs and forget their troubles. But it was exactly the kind of place where a man could sit alone with his thoughts and a whiskey, which was precisely what I needed. I hadn't actually made plans with Sasha or anyone else. That had been a convenient fiction to establish my new independence. Instead, I spent 2 hours nursing a single glass of bourbon and thinking about my next moves. By the time I got home, it was nearly 11 p.m., and the house was dark, except for the porch light Seren had left on. She was already in bed, but I could tell she wasn't asleep. There's a particular quality to someone pretending to sleep that's unmistakable after 17 years of marriage. I brushed my teeth, changed into my pajamas, and slipped under the covers without a word. "How was your evening?" she asked quietly. "Fine. Relaxing." "Good." A pause. "Wes, about earlier." "I'm tired, Seren. Can we talk tomorrow?" She was quiet for so long I thought she might have actually fallen asleep. Then, "Okay, tomorrow." But tomorrow came and went without any meaningful conversation. Seren left for work before I got up, and when I came home that evening, she was at our daughter Sadie's soccer practice. We passed each other like polite strangers sharing a house, which I supposed was exactly what we'd become. The real breakthrough came 3 days later, when I was setting up our new shared tablet and discovered that Seren had never changed the password on her cloud backup. It was still the same combination of our anniversary date and her maiden name that she'd been using for years. I should have felt guilty about accessing her private files. A better man probably would have. But a better man's wife probably wouldn't have been planning to abandon him for a smooth-talking consultant named Ethan. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for 4 months, not 6. It had started during a company retreat in Burlington, progressed through weeks of increasingly intimate text exchanges, and culminated in regular meetings at the Riverside Motel on Route 9. Seren had been meticulous about covering her tracks, or so she thought. She'd created a separate folder for photos and videos, thinking they were safely hidden in her personal cloud storage. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning my entire future without my input. According to their messages, Ethan was going to help Seren document my emotional unavailability and failure to contribute to the household. They had discussed strategies for making me look like an unfit father, including recording conversations where they would deliberately provoke me into angry responses. The goal was to position Seren as the long-suffering wife who deserved primary custody, the house, and a generous support arrangement. "He's so predictable," Seren had written in one message. "Give him a problem to solve and he disappears into his basement for hours. Perfect evidence of neglect." "Smart girl," Ethan had responded. "Document everything. We want this to be as clean as possible." The most damning evidence was a voice memo Seren had recorded just 2 weeks earlier, apparently meant for Ethan. "I'm tired of pretending this marriage works. Wes is a good father, I'll give him that, but he's like living with a roommate who pays half the bills. There's no passion, no excitement, no future. Just routine and responsibility. I want more than that. I deserve more than that." She deserved more. After 17 years of marriage, 2 children, a house we'd built together, and countless shared dreams, she deserved more than the man who'd supported her through graduate school, celebrated every promotion, and never once questioned her late nights or weekend work trips. I downloaded everything to a secure drive and spent the next week planning my response. If Seren wanted to play games, I was going to show her what happened when you underestimated the quiet guy in the basement. My first move was reconnaissance. I started paying attention to her patterns, her schedule, her tells. Seren thought she was being clever, but she'd gotten sloppy. Her late meetings always coincided with Ethan's availability. Her sudden interest in weekend conferences always aligned with his travel schedule. Her new workout routine, which required special athletic wear and took place at a gym across town, happened to be located 2 blocks from Ethan's apartment. I also started building my own evidence file. Not for divorce proceedings, though that was probably inevitable, but for something more immediate and satisfying. Seren wanted to destroy my reputation. I was going to return the favor. The opportunity came sooner than I'd expected. "Wes," Sasha said one afternoon, appearing at my office door with her arms crossed and her detective face on. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About whatever's been eating at you for the past 2 weeks. You're distracted, you're angry, and yesterday I caught you staring at your phone like it had personally insulted your mother." I looked at my closest friend and colleague, weighing my options. Sasha was smart, discreet, and had a talent for strategic thinking that would have impressed military generals. She was also fiercely protective of the people she cared about, which occasionally got her into trouble with the more diplomatic members of our staff. "If I tell you something," I said slowly, "can you promise to keep it between us?" "Depends what it is." "Serene's having an affair." Sasha's expression didn't change, but I saw her hands tighten slightly on the doorframe. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks, maybe longer, if I'm honest about the signs I missed." "Evidence?" "Plenty." "Plan?" That was Sasha, straight to the practical questions. No shocked gasps, no expressions of sympathy, no useless platitudes about how sorry she was. Just the information she needed to help me figure out my next move. "Working on it," I said. She stepped into my office and closed the door behind her. "What kind of help do you need?" "The kind that might get you in trouble if anyone asks." "Let me worry about that. What do you need?" I opened my laptop and showed her some of the evidence I'd gathered. Sasha read through the messages with the same focused intensity she brought to researching obscure academic questions. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "She's not just cheating," she said. "She's actively trying to destroy you. That's the part that really bothers me. I could have understood an affair. People fall out of love, they make mistakes, they get lonely. But this is calculated. So, what's the plan? I want to beat her at her own game. She thinks I'm predictable, boring, just a friend. I'm going to show her exactly what kind of friend I can be." Sasha grinned, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. "Now you're talking. What do you need me to do?" We spent the next hour planning phase 1 of my response. It was going to be public, humiliating, and absolutely devastating. More importantly, it was going to be perfectly legal and completely justified. Seren wanted a war. She was about to get one. But first, I needed to do some reconnaissance at the Riverside Motel. The Riverside Motel sat on a stretch of Route 9 that had seen better decades. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions about why married people needed privacy away from their own homes. Perfect for conducting an affair, terrible for avoiding detection if someone knew where to look. Sasha and I parked across the street on a Thursday evening, armed with coffee, patience, and a camera with a telephoto lens that she'd borrowed from her photography enthusiast brother. We didn't have to wait long. Seren's silver Honda pulled into the motel parking lot at 6:47 p.m., followed 3 minutes later by a black BMW that I recognized from the company directory photos on her firm's website. Ethan Baird stepped out of the BMW looking exactly like his LinkedIn profile, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confident swagger that probably impressed clients and definitely impressed my wife. They met at the motel office where Ethan handled the registration while Seren waited by the vending machines trying to look casual. Even from across the street, I could see the nervous energy in her posture. She kept checking her phone and glancing around the parking lot, clearly worried about being spotted. Room 237, Sasha murmured, tracking their movement through the camera's viewfinder. Second floor corner unit, and look who's helping them maintain their privacy. She was right. Jenna Walsh, Serene's best friend from work, was standing near the motel entrance, apparently acting as a lookout. As we watched, she handed something to the desk clerk, probably cash to ensure his discretion. "This is more organized than I thought," I said. "Conspiracy to commit adultery," Sasha replied, snapping photos. "Your wife's got herself a whole support network." We documented their arrival, their room assignment, and their departure 2 hours later. The photos weren't explicit. I wasn't interested in that kind of evidence, but they were damning enough to prove what everyone in town would soon suspect. Phase 1 of my plan was scheduled for the following Saturday, the annual Whitmore Harvest Festival. It was the biggest social event of the year, drawing hundreds of families to the town square for live music, local vendors, and enough small-town gossip to fuel conversations until Christmas. More importantly, it featured a community stage where local musicians, school groups, and civic organizations took turns entertaining the crowd. I had volunteered to help with the sound system. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for a public revelation. Seren was in an unusually good mood, humming while she made breakfast and chattering about her plans to volunteer at the school's fundraising booth. She had no idea that her boyfriend would also be at the festival, probably planning to admire her from a safe distance while maintaining their public facade of professional acquaintance. "You're working the sound booth?" she asked as I loaded my equipment into the car. "Someone has to make sure the microphones work," I replied. "Can't have the mayor's speech cutting out in the middle of his re-election pitch." "That's nice of you to volunteer." Nice. That was me. Nice, reliable, predictable Wes, always willing to help with the technical details that kept everyone else's lives running smoothly. She had no idea how useful those technical skills were about to become. The festival setup went smoothly. I spent the morning testing equipment, running sound checks, and making sure everything was working perfectly. By noon, the town square was packed with families enjoying the beautiful weather and the festive atmosphere. I spotted Ethan near the craft beer tent, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. He was playing the part of a single professional enjoying a community event, chatting with strangers and sampling local products. Every few minutes, his eyes would drift toward the school fundraising booth, where Seren was selling raffle tickets and managing volunteers. They were being careful not to interact directly, but their awareness of each other was obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. Seren would laugh a little too loudly at something one of her volunteers said, making sure Ethan could hear her across the square. Ethan would position himself where she could see him, then make exaggerated gestures while talking to other festival goers. It was like watching a middle school flirtation conducted by people old enough to know better. At 2:30 p.m., the high school jazz ensemble finished their set and the mayor took the stage for his traditional festival address. This was my moment. Testing, testing, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly across the crowded square. Can everyone hear me okay? A few people nodded and waved. Perfect. Great. Before Mayor Richardson begins his remarks, I wanted to share something special with everyone. My wife Seren and I have been married for 17 years, and I recently discovered some audio that really captures the essence of our relationship. I thought you'd all enjoy hearing it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Seren looked up from the raffle booth, confusion flickering across her face. She couldn't hear my words clearly from that distance, but she could see me at the microphone and probably wondered why I was talking about our marriage at a public event. I connected my phone to the sound system and hit play. Ethan's voice boomed across the town square. Can't wait for you to sneak out again tonight, babe. That motel room is becoming our second home. The crowd went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Children continued playing, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them, but every grown-up in the square was suddenly paying very close attention to the community sound system. Seren's voice came next, breathy and intimate. I know. I just wish we didn't have to be so careful. I'm tired of pretending. Soon, Ethan replied. Once we get everything documented and the lawyers handle the details, we can be together properly. No more sneaking around. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds, long enough to establish context, not long enough to become gratuitously embarrassing. Then I switched off the audio and leaned back into the microphone. Sorry about that, folks, I said, my voice carrying just the right note of rueful humor. Wrong playlist. Technology, am I right? Anyway, here's Mayor Richardson. The mayor, to his credit, stepped up to the microphone and began his speech as if nothing had happened. But the damage was done. The crowd was buzzing with whispered conversations. People were pulling out their phones to text friends who'd missed the revelation, and all eyes were turning toward the school fundraising booth where my wife stood frozen in horror. Ethan, meanwhile, had gone pale and was trying to edge toward the parking lot without drawing attention to himself. Too late for that. I packed up my equipment and made my way through the crowd, accepting sympathetic pats on the shoulder and murmured expressions of support. Small towns loved a scandal, but they also respected a man who handled his business with dignity and a sense of humor. Wes! Serene's voice cut through the crowd noise. She was pushing through the festival goers, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. What the hell was that? Audio equipment malfunction, I said calmly. These old systems can be tricky. Sometimes they pick up random radio signals, cell phone conversations, that sort of thing. That wasn't random and you know it. Do I? I'm just a simple librarian, Serene. I wouldn't know how to deliberately broadcast someone's private conversations, even if I wanted to. She stared at me, searching my face for some sign of the man she thought she knew, the predictable, boring, reliable husband who would never embarrass her in front of the entire town. We need to talk, she said through gritted teeth. I agree, but maybe not here? People are starting to stare. She looked around and realized that we had indeed become the center of attention. Dozens of neighbors, friends, and acquaintances were watching our interaction with barely concealed fascination. At home, she said. Now. I'll be along shortly. I need to finish packing up the equipment. Wes. Seren. I kept my voice gentle but firm. I said I'll be home shortly. Please don't make more of a scene than necessary. She wanted to argue, I could see it in her eyes. But we were surrounded by people she'd have to face at work, at school events, at the grocery store. So she turned and walked toward the parking lot, her dignity intact but her secret thoroughly exposed. I finished packing my equipment with deliberate care, taking my time and chatting pleasantly with anyone who approached. Most people were kind enough not to ask direct questions, but the sympathy in their voices was unmistakable. "Tough break, Wes," said Tom Mueller, who lived 3 houses down from us. "If you need anything—" "Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that." "Hell of a way to find out," added his wife Linda. "But better to know the truth, right?" "Absolutely. Knowledge is power, as they say." By the time I got home, Seren's car was in the garage and every light in the house was on. I found her in the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal. "Sit down," she said. "We're going to talk about this." "I'd rather stand, thanks. Long day." "Wes, I don't know how you got that recording, but what you did today was cruel and humiliating." "Was it? I thought it was educational. The whole town learned something new about our marriage. Isn't transparency important in relationships?" "Don't you dare get sarcastic with me right now." "I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, actually." Seren stopped pacing and faced me directly. "What do you want? An apology? Counseling? What's it going to take to fix this?" "Fix what?" "Our marriage." "Seren," I said quietly, "you can't fix something that one person has already decided to throw away. You made your choice when you started planning my destruction with your boyfriend. I'm just making sure the whole process is transparent." "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. I've seen the messages, the photos, the planning documents. You and Ethan have been working very hard to make me look like a neglectful husband and father so you can justify taking everything I've worked for." She opened her mouth to deny it, then seemed to realize there was no point. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to prepare." "Prepare for what?" I smiled, and apparently something in my expression made her take a step backward. "You wanted to see me as just a friend, Seren. I'm going to show you exactly what kind of friend I can be." The next phase of my plan required patience and precision. Seren expected me to rage, to make demands, to behave like the predictable husband she'd grown tired of. Instead, I became methodical. Monday morning, I visited our bank and converted our joint checking account to individual accounts. Perfectly legal. Both our names were on the signature card, and I withdrew exactly half of the balance. I also canceled the credit cards that were linked to my income and opened new accounts that Seren couldn't access. When she discovered the changes that evening, she was furious. "You can't just cut off my access to our money." "I didn't cut off your access to your money," I replied, not looking up from the book I was reading. "I just separated your money from my money. Friends don't typically share financial accounts. We have a mortgage, utilities, car payments, which will continue to be paid from the household account that covers our shared expenses. Your personal spending, however, is your responsibility now." "This is ridiculous, Wes. We're married." "Are we? Because according to that recording from the festival, you're planning to change that status pretty soon. I'm just getting ahead of the paperwork." She stared at me, clearly trying to figure out her next move. The old Wes would have been open to negotiation, willing to discuss terms and find compromises. The new Wes was done negotiating. "Where am I supposed to get money for personal expenses?" "The same place you got money for motel rooms and new workout clothes. I assume Ethan has been contributing to those costs?" Her face flushed. "That's none of your business." "You're absolutely right. Just like my personal finances are none of yours. See how easy this is when we respect each other's boundaries?" Tuesday brought another small adjustment. I changed the locks on my basement workshop and my home office, installing new deadbolts that only I could access. When Seren asked about it, I explained that friends respect each other's private spaces. "Since when do you need privacy from your own family?" "Since I realized how important it is to maintain personal boundaries. You've been very clear about wanting independence. I'm just following your example." Wednesday, I removed her access to my work calendar, my personal email, and the shared cloud storage where we'd kept family photos and documents. I also redirected the household bills to my personal email and took over management of all our shared accounts. "You're being controlling," Seren accused. "I'm being responsible. Friends don't typically manage each other's administrative details." By Thursday, she was starting to panic. The comfortable life she'd taken for granted, where all the practical details were handled automatically and she could focus on her career and her affair, was disappearing, piece by piece. "Wes, this has gone far enough. We need to talk about this like adults." "I'm listening. I made a mistake, I know that, but we can work through this if you're willing to try." "What kind of mistake?" "The thing with Ethan, it got out of hand, but it's over now." "When did it end?" "When you played that recording. I realized how it must have looked to you, and I ended it immediately." I set down my book and looked at her directly. "Show me." "What?" "Show me the message where you ended it. If you broke things off with Ethan, there must be a text, an email, a voicemail. Show me." Serene's face went through several expressions before settling on defiance. "I don't have to prove anything to you." "You're absolutely right. Friends don't owe each other proof of their romantic decisions." "Stop saying that." "Stop saying what?" "That we're just friends. We're married. We have children. We have a life together." "We have legal obligations and shared responsibilities," I corrected. "But you made it very clear that emotionally, romantically, we're just friends. I'm simply adjusting my behavior to match your stated preferences." Friday evening, Seren tried a different approach. She dressed up in the outfit she used to wear for our anniversary dinners, made my favorite meal, and set the dining room table with our good china. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together," she said when I came home from work. "Just the two of us. The kids are at friends' houses." "That's very thoughtful, but I already have plans." "What plans?" "Personal plans." "With who?" "Friends." "What friends? You never go out with friends." "I'm expanding my social circle. You said I should have my own life, remember?" This time, I actually did have plans. Sasha and I were meeting at the Black Finch to discuss Phase 2 of my strategy. We'd also invited Mr. Grady, my 73-year-old neighbor who'd spent 30 years as a police detective before retiring to his garden and his workshop. "She's getting desperate," Sasha observed after I'd updated them on the week's developments. "Good," said Mr. Grady. "Desperate people make mistakes. What's your next move?" "I want to expose the full scope of their planning. The affair is public knowledge now, but people don't understand how calculated this whole thing was. They think Seren just fell for another man. They don't know she was actively trying to destroy my reputation." "What kind of evidence do you have?" Mr. Grady asked. I showed them some of the messages and documents I'd downloaded from Serene's cloud storage. The detective read through them with professional interest, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin. "This is conspiracy," he said finally. "Not legally, since adultery and divorce planning aren't crimes, but morally, she was setting you up for complete destruction. The question is how to reveal that, without looking like I'm just trying to get revenge," I said. "Are you trying to get revenge?" Sasha asked. "Absolutely, but I want it to look like justice." Mr. Grady grinned. "I like your style, son. What do you need from us?" We spent the next hour planning Phase 2. It was going to be more complex than the festival revelation, requiring careful timing and multiple moving parts. But if it worked, Seren's reputation would be as thoroughly destroyed as she'd intended mine to be. "One question," Sasha said as we prepared to leave. "What's your endgame here? Do you want to save your marriage or end it?" "I want to win," I said. "Everything else is negotiable." When I got home that night, Seren was waiting in the living room with a bottle of wine and what looked like a prepared speech. "We need to talk," she began. "I'm listening." "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I made terrible choices, and I hurt you in ways that I'm only beginning to understand. But we have 17 years together, Wes. We have 2 children who need both their parents. We have a life worth fighting for. Do we? Yes. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild what we've lost. Counseling, therapy, complete transparency about my whereabouts and communications. Whatever you need. What I need, I said slowly, is for you to understand that some things can't be rebuilt. They can only be replaced. What does that mean? It means that the marriage we had is over. You ended it when you decided I was just a friend. The question now is what comes next. And what do you want to come next? I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. I want you to experience exactly what you planned for me. I want you to lose your reputation, your support system, your sense of security, and your ability to control the narrative. I want you to understand what it feels like to be systematically destroyed by someone you trusted. Seren went pale. Wes, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Because unlike you, I don't need to lie or manipulate or recruit accomplices to get what I want. I just need to tell the truth. What truth? All of it. Every message, every plan, every cruel calculation you and Ethan made about my future. The whole town is going to know exactly what kind of person you really are. You can't do that. It would destroy me. Yes, I said. It would. I left her sitting in the living room and went upstairs to bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Phase 2 would begin on Monday. Monday morning, I arrived at work early and spent an hour crafting a carefully worded email. The recipient was Rebecca Chen, the Director of Human Resources at Seren's company, a woman I'd met several times at corporate events and who prided herself on maintaining the highest ethical standards in her organization. The email was professional, factual, and devastating. Dear Ms. Chen, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to bring a matter to your attention that may require investigation by your department. I have recently discovered that my wife, Seren Farrow, has been conducting a personal relationship with her colleague Ethan Baird that appears to violate your company's policies regarding workplace conduct and conflicts of interest. While I understand that personal relationships are generally private matters, there are several aspects of this situation that may be of concern to your organization. 1. The relationship has involved the use of company resources, including time during work hours for personal communications and coordination of meetings. 2. Both parties have discussed using their positions within the company to support documentation for potential legal proceedings related to our marriage. 3. There appears to be a pattern of coordinated behavior that may constitute a conflict of interest, particularly given Mr. Baird's role as a consultant on projects that Ms. Farrow's department oversees. I've attached time-stamped documentation that supports these concerns. I want to emphasize that I'm not seeking any particular outcome, but I believe your organization should be aware of these activities. Please let me know if you need any additional information. Sincerely, Wesley Farrow. The attachments included screenshots of messages discussing their use of work time for personal communications, references to company resources being used for their relationship, and most damaging of all, conversations about how their professional positions could be leveraged to support Seren's divorce strategy. I sent the email at 8:47 a.m. and copied my personal attorney, establishing a paper trail that would be useful later. By 10:30 a.m., my phone was buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from Seren. The screen lit up again and again on my desk, each vibration a little sharper than the last, like a pulse I could feel even when I wasn't looking at it. I let the phone sit there face down, the muffled hum bleeding into the quiet of my office, while I finished reading a footnote one of my students had mangled beyond recognition. Did you contact my work? The question sat unanswered, heavy with implication. HR wants to see me at 2 p.m. I imagined her reading that email, the sudden shift from routine to dread. What did you tell them? The assumption embedded in the question almost made me smile. Wes, please call me. That one lingered a moment longer than the others before disappearing under the next alert. This could ruin my career. The irony was almost elegant. I didn't respond to any of them. Friends don't typically involve themselves in each other's professional difficulties. That was the line I'd settled on, the boundary drawn clean and straight in my own mind. Instead, I focused on my own work, helping students with research projects and organizing a new digital archive initiative that had been approved months earlier. Around noon, Sasha stopped by my office with coffee and curiosity. The morning passed smoothly, emails answered, references clarified, folders sorted into sensible hierarchies. It felt good to be useful, to do something constructive while someone else's world tilted off its axis. Sasha leaned against the doorframe, 2 cups in hand, eyes already searching my face for clues. You look pleased with yourself, she observed. She handed me a cup, eyebrow raised. Just enjoying a productive day at work. I took the coffee, the warmth grounding. Uh-huh. Any particular reason you're so productive? She didn't bother pretending she wasn't fishing. I sent some information to the appropriate parties this morning, just being a good citizen. I kept my voice light, almost casual. What kind of information? Her curiosity sharpened. I showed her a copy of the email I'd sent to Rebecca Chen. Sasha read it twice, then looked up at me with something approaching awe. Her eyes flicked back to the screen, then to me again, like she was recalibrating. This is beautiful, she said. Professional, factual, completely devastating. How long before she figures out it was you? There was admiration there, unfiltered. She already knows. But knowing and proving are different things. Everything in that email is documented fact. I closed the file and set my laptop aside. What's she going to do? Sasha lowered her voice, as if Seren might materialize in the hallway. Probably panic. Maybe try to get ahead of the investigation by claiming I'm a vindictive husband making false accusations, but the evidence speaks for itself. The truth had a weight to it that no spin could fully lift. My phone buzzed with another message from Seren. I'm coming to see you after my HR meeting. We need to talk. The timing was almost perfect. This time I did respond. I'll be in meetings all afternoon. Maybe we can catch up this evening. It was polite, non-committal, and just far enough out of reach to hurt. At 3:15 p.m., my office phone rang. The caller ID showed Seren's work number. I let it ring once more than necessary before answering. Wesley Farrow, I answered, formal, controlled. Wes, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. Seren's voice was strained, with an edge of panic I'd never heard before. The confidence she usually carried was gone, replaced by something thin and brittle. Sorry, busy day. How did your meeting go? I swiveled my chair toward the window, watching students cross the quad below. It was difficult. They've opened a formal investigation into my conduct and Ethan's. We're both suspended pending the outcome. She rushed the last part, like saying it faster might make it less real. That sounds serious. I kept my tone neutral. Serious? Wes, this could end my career. 15 years with this company, and now I'm suspended because of your vindictive email to HR. There it was, the accusation finally voiced. My email? I'm not sure what you're referring to. I said it slowly, thoughtfully. Don't play dumb. I know you sent them information about Ethan and me. Her frustration bled through the receiver. Did I? That seems like something I would remember. I could hear her breathing hard on the other end. Wes, please, I'm begging you. Call Rebecca Chen and tell her you made a mistake, that you were angry and exaggerated the situation. Tell her it was just a misunderstanding. The word begging wasn't an exaggeration. I can't do that. I didn't hesitate. Why not? Her voice dropped, raw now. Because I'd be lying. And friends should always be honest with each other. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Seren spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I can play too. I've already called my attorney. By the end of the week, you'll be served with divorce papers and a restraining order. I'll claim you've been threatening me, that I'm afraid for my safety. The kids will stay with me, you'll be out of the house, and we'll see how much you enjoy your little revenge games when you're living in a studio apartment and seeing your children every other weekend. That's an interesting strategy, I said calmly. There's just one problem with it. What? I've been recording our conversations for the past 2 weeks, including this one. Another silence, longer this time. You're bluffing. Am I? You know me pretty well, Seren. When have you ever known me to bluff about something important? That's illegal. You can't record someone without their consent. Actually, I can. We live in a one-party consent state, which means I only need my own permission to record conversations I'm participating in. I checked with my attorney before I started. You have an attorney? I have several attorneys: divorce, employment law, criminal defense. I like to be prepared for various contingencies. I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how much trouble she was in and how many of her recent conversations I might have documented. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You spent months planning to destroy my life, my reputation, and my relationship with my children. Now you're experiencing what that feels like. This isn't over. No, it's not. But you're not in control of how it ends anymore. I hung up and immediately called my attorney to report the conversation and Seren's threats. Then I sent a copy of the recording to my secure cloud storage and made backup copies on 2 separate drives. By evening, the news of Seren's suspension had somehow made its way through the local professional network. My phone was buzzing with messages from friends and neighbors expressing sympathy and offering support. Heard about Seren's work troubles, texted Tom Mueller. Sorry you're dealing with all this. Let us know if you need anything, wrote Linda Mueller. Company's loss, added Sasha. Karma's got perfect timing. When I got home, Seren's car wasn't in the garage. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Jenna's tonight. Need space to think. Perfect. I had the house to myself and could focus on preparing phase 3 of my plan. I was just getting started. Seren stayed at Jenna's house for 3 days, during which time several interesting developments occurred. First, Ethan Baird was terminated from his consulting position, effective immediately. Second, the story of their affair and subsequent workplace investigation became the talk of the local professional community. Third, and most importantly, I received a call from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. Is this Wesley Farrow? The voice was unfamiliar, female, with a slight southern accent. Speaking. My name is Amanda Torres. I'm calling about Ethan Baird. I'm not sure how I can help you with that. Well, I think we might be able to help each other. See, Ethan was engaged to my sister until about 6 months ago. He broke things off suddenly, said he'd met someone else, someone who could advance his career prospects. I've been trying to figure out who that someone was. I sat down slowly. And now you know? I saw the news about his termination and did some research. Your wife's name came up in connection with a workplace investigation. I put 2 and 2 together. What exactly are you looking for, Ms. Torres? Justice, I suppose. Ethan destroyed my sister's life. She'd planned their wedding, put down deposits, told her whole family. When he left, he took half their shared savings and stuck her with all the wedding debts. She had a nervous breakdown, lost her job, had to move back in with our parents. I'm sorry to hear that. The thing is, Mr. Farrow, I think your wife might not be the first married woman Ethan's targeted. I've been doing some digging and there's a pattern. He seems to specialize in seducing women who have something he wants: money, connections, professional opportunities. This was getting interesting. What kind of pattern? 3 women in the past 5 years, all married, all in positions that could benefit his career. He gets involved with them, uses their resources and connections, then moves on when he finds a better opportunity or when things get too complicated. And you have evidence of this? I have documentation going back 2 years, financial records, communications, witness statements from people who worked with him. I was planning to expose him myself, but then this situation with your wife happened, and I thought maybe we could coordinate our efforts. We arranged to meet that evening at a coffee shop downtown. Amanda Torres turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her early 30s who worked as a forensic accountant and had the kind of methodical approach to revenge that I could appreciate. "Here's what I know about Ethan's methods," she said, spreading documents across our table. "He researches his targets carefully, usually through professional networks or social media. He looks for women who are financially stable, professionally successful, and showing signs of marital dissatisfaction." She showed me social media posts and professional networking activity that painted a clear picture of Ethan's predatory behavior. "He's been monitoring your wife's social media for almost a year," Amanda continued, liking her posts, commenting on her professional achievements, gradually building a connection before they ever met in person. "How did you find all this?" "I'm good at following digital trails, and I'm very motivated." We spent 2 hours comparing notes and evidence. By the end of the evening, we had a comprehensive picture of Ethan's serial manipulation of married women, including financial fraud, identity manipulation, and what could arguably be classified as emotional abuse. "What's your endgame?" I asked. "I want him exposed publicly and professionally. I want every woman in this region to know what kind of man he is before he can target someone else. And I want my wife to understand that she wasn't special to him. She was just another mark. Then we're aligned. What do you propose?" The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Amanda would compile all her evidence into a comprehensive report documenting Ethan's pattern of targeting married women. I would add the evidence from his relationship with Seren, showing how it fit into his established methods. Then, we would distribute the report to every major employer, professional organization, and social network in the region. "He'll never work in this area again," Amanda said with satisfaction. "And Seren will have to face the fact that everything she threw away was for a man who saw her as nothing more than a business opportunity." We shook hands on our alliance, and I drove home feeling more optimistic than I had in months. Seren was waiting for me in the kitchen, looking haggard and defeated. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening. I want to come home. I want to try to fix this." "What changed your mind?" "Jenna. She's not as supportive as I thought she'd be. And staying there made me realize how much I've taken for granted here. Such as this house, our life together, the stability you provide. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I think we can work through them if we both try." I poured myself a glass of water and considered her words. "What about Ethan?" "It's over. Completely over. I realize now that it was never real anyway. He was just using me." "What makes you say that?" "Things he said, things he did. I think he was more interested in what I could do for his career than in me as a person." Perfect. She was already starting to understand, which would make the final revelation even more devastating. "I appreciate you telling me that," I said. "But I'm afraid it's too late." "What do you mean?" "I mean that some things can't be fixed, Seren. Some damage is permanent. But we could try counseling, therapy." "No, we couldn't, because I don't want to fix this anymore." She stared at me, confusion and desperation flickering across her face. "I don't understand. For 17 years, I thought we were partners. I thought we were building something together. I thought you respected me, valued me, loved me. But you didn't. You saw me as a convenience, a service provider, someone who handled the practical details of life while you focused on more interesting things. That's not true." "It is true." And the affair wasn't the real betrayal, Seren. The real betrayal was the systematic planning to destroy me. The recordings you were going to make, the documentation you were gathering, the narrative you were building about what a terrible husband and father I am. That's what I can't forgive. I wasn't going to go through with that. It was just contingency planning. Contingency planning to ruin my life and take my children away from me. I was scared. I didn't know how you'd react when you found out about Ethan. I thought you might try to hurt me financially or legally. So you decided to hurt me first. I was protecting myself. No, you were protecting your ability to control the situation. You wanted to leave me for another man, but you also wanted to keep the house, the kids, and the moral high ground. You wanted to be the victim instead of the person who destroyed a 17-year marriage for a workplace fling. Seren was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. "What can I do?" she asked. "How can I make this right?" "You can't, but you can make it easier." "How?" "By accepting responsibility for your choices and agreeing to a fair division of assets and custody. No games, no manipulation, no attempts to rewrite history." "And if I don't?" I smiled, and she took an involuntary step backward. "Then you'll discover that you weren't the only woman Ethan was manipulating, and you'll learn exactly how much of your relationship was real versus how much was calculated professional advancement on his part." "What are you talking about?" "Ask him about Amanda Torres. Ask him about Jennifer Walsh. No relation to your friend Jenna. Ask him about Patricia Hoffman. Ask him about the pattern of targeting married women with resources and connections he could exploit." Seren's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I? You know me pretty well. When have you ever known me to lie about something this important?" She sank into a kitchen chair, the full weight of her situation finally hitting her. "Tomorrow," I continued, "a very detailed report about Ethan's professional and personal conduct is going to be distributed to every major employer and professional organization in this region. Your name will be mentioned as one of his victims, but the focus will be on his pattern of predatory behavior. You can't do that. I can, and I will. Unless what? Unless you agree to my terms for the divorce. Fair custody, fair division of assets, and a mutual agreement that we'll both move on with our lives without further drama." "And if I agree?" "Then your involvement with Ethan gets presented as another example of his manipulation rather than a calculated affair. You get to be a victim instead of a villain." Seren looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. She was smart enough to realize that she had very few good choices left. "I need time to think about this." "You have until tomorrow morning. The report goes out at 9 a.m. whether you've decided or not." I left her sitting in the kitchen and went upstairs to pack some clothes. Win or lose, I was done sharing a house with my wife, but I was pretty sure I was going to win. The next morning, Seren was waiting for me in the kitchen with a handwritten letter. "I agree to your terms," she said quietly. "All of them." I read through the letter, which outlined her acceptance of a 50-50 split of assets and custody, her agreement not to contest the divorce, and her acknowledgement that the breakdown of our marriage was primarily due to her own choices. "Smart decision," I said. "What happens now?" "Now we move forward. Separately." I called Amanda Torres and told her to proceed with the report, but to frame Seren's involvement as another example of Ethan's manipulation, rather than a willing conspiracy. It was a small kindness, but one that would make co-parenting easier in the future. 6 months later, I was living in a downtown apartment that I actually liked better than our suburban house. Owen and Sadie split their time between Seren's place and mine, and while the transition had been difficult, we were all adapting. Seren had found a new job in a different city and was slowly rebuilding her professional reputation. We spoke only when necessary, and always politely. The anger had faded, leaving behind something that might eventually become indifference. Ethan Baird had left the region entirely after the report destroyed his professional prospects. I'd heard he was working for a small consulting firm in another state, probably starting the process of rebuilding his career and finding new targets. As for me, I'd learned something valuable about the difference between being nice and being respected. I'd spent 17 years being accommodating, predictable, and reliable. Now I was learning to be strategic, decisive, and uncompromising when necessary. Seren had wanted to see me as just a friend. In the end, I'd shown her exactly what kind of friend I could be, the kind you never want to cross. And that, I thought, was a lesson worth learning.